Block Island has seen a lot of changes since 1661, when this approximately 7 by 3 mile mound of glacial till was first settled by Europeans, who quickly set about clearing the land of trees and creating the island's signature lacework of fieldstone walls. 200 years of mostly farming and fishing followed, until wealthy Victorians found the island to be an ideal place to spend the hot summer months. Following that period, Block Island largely reverted to its agricultural ways until vacationers rediscovered its charms in the 1970s. These days, the island bustles with activity during the summer months, when the population swells from a mere 1,000 year-round residents to 15,000 to 20,000 visitors per day. What these summer visitors often miss amid the distractions of beaches, boats, and bars are Block Island's natural attractions, which is why those who wish to enjoy outdoor activities while avoiding the crowds would do well to plan a visit during the so-called shoulder seasons of late spring and early fall. If you're used to the summer scene on the block, you'll feel like you have the island all to yourself. Explore New England is brought to you by your New England Ford dealers, REI Co-op. REI believes a life outdoors is a life well lived. Geico. See how much you could save on more than just car insurance. And visitnewengland.com. Additional funding and support for this episode was provided by the Block Island Tourism Council. Driven by a desire to experience a quieter side of Block Island, I drove to Point Judith, Rhode Island, where I boarded the Block Island Ferry for the 16-mile trip to Old Harbor on the island's eastern shore. Even though July 4th was a few weeks away, plenty of businesses were open, including hotels, inns, restaurants, shops, and bike rental companies. Block Island is an ideal cycling destination, with beautiful vistas and intriguing sights at every turn. Plus, you don't have to be an experienced cyclist to tackle the island terrain. You can rent bikes at several locations or bring your own on the ferry. Either way, you want to check out the self-guided bike tour, which consists of 12 stops or stations, each positioned at an island highlight and marked with a circular signpost bearing a QR code in the center. Scan the QR code on your phone to access a short video at each station that tells you about what you're seeing or the history of where you're standing. The full self-guided tour route is about 16 miles and includes a long, flat section along Corn Neck Road to North Lighthouse at the island's northern tip. Families and novice cyclists may want to opt for the shorter 7.5 mile loop that leads south along Spring Street to Southeast Light, then circles back to town via Monhegan Trail and Lakeside Drive. This route features a few hills, but nothing too extreme. The tour ends at Water Street in New Shoreham, where you can reward yourself with a bite to eat, a cold drink, or an ice cream. If you don't want to bring your cell phone, wallet-sized maps of the route with short descriptions of each station are available free at the Welcome Center, across from the ferry docks, and at most of the bike rental companies in town. As you explore Block Island by bike, be sure to stop at some of the many hiking trails along the way. Block Island is unique among the major islands off southern New England in that 47% of the land is preserved open space. Numerous well-marked trails lead through a variety of coastal and upland habitat and provide the visitor with glimpses of many bird species. To learn more about the island's natural history, I met up with Kim Gaffett of the Nature Conservancy, who led me on a short walk through the Fresh Pond Preserve, which is part of the larger Block Island Greenway Trail system.
The Nature Conservancy's basic mission is to preserve all the lands and waters that preserve life, and that's throughout the world. On Block Island we have a very strong extra component of public education, which is where I step in. I do a lot of nature walks and things like that. But if we aren't preserving our waters and our lands to grow food and to have all what they call the ecological services of nature, to control erosion and provide habitat for the whole matrix of biodiversity of animals and critters and grasses and insects, then we don't have a very stable world. So the island was formed by a glacial deposit, and the glacier advanced to about southern New England, southern Rhode Island, parts of Long Island, Cape Cod, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, all of those areas. And then it started to retreat, which
About what time?
about 20,000 years ago. As it retreated, in other words, started to melt, everything that was bound up in that ice just fell out and stayed where it was. Early settlers, they cleared the island, completely deforested it. They needed to clear the fields for farming, and they needed the wood for house building, boat building, and fuel. So from that point till about 1950, it was all open rolling farm field. And they would, as they cleared the field, all these erratic boulders, they had to do something with them because they didn't compete too well with the potatoes. So they started building these walls. You couldn't waste wood on wood fencing, so you made stone fencing. And there's about 300 miles of these stone walls crisscrossing the island. And if you could look at an old picture of the island, you know, up until the 1950s or maybe even a little later, it would look like just shorn, rolling farm fields.
And not a tree in sight.
No tree, no shrub, no bayberry, no shad, no viburnum, none of these invasive species. Just rolling farm fields held in place by this beautiful lacework of stone walls. Wow. This is a common milkweed. Right? It's such a beautiful plant. This is the first one I've seen blooming this year. But this one, if you look at that, that is just a beautiful plant. And that is a host to the monarch caterpillar. And these fields will be filled with one. You can, once you start looking, there's another one there.
So the monarch butterflies, the monarch caterpillars, obviously, do they feed the caterpillars feed exclusively on the milkweed?
Yeah. The monarch caterpillar will land and lay her egg on the underside of the leaf. Then when the egg hatches, the little tiny caterpillar, it's right on its food source. Okay, so this pond is one of our larger ponds on the island, actually. It's the second largest pond on Block Island. So even though we have the 365 smaller ponds, this is a larger one. Most of the ponds are circular. This one you notice is sort of elongated. This is what's called a meltwater channel. So water melting off of the glacier carved out this channel.
And what about kettle ponds?
A kettle pond is a smaller, rounder one, and it's formed when a chunk of the glacier falls off and water starts running around it. And as it runs around it, it's carrying sediment and sand and stuff, and it builds up around this solid object. When that ice cube melts, there's a depression because all this debris has built up around it, and that's called a kettle hole. I have always loved nature, and yeah, I grew up on the island. And when people say, well, what did you do? You know, I go, well, you know, you could walk anywhere on Block Island, you didn't have to worry about a thing. And I got interested, and I went away to school and got a degree in biology, and got lucky to start working about 20 years ago for an organization called the Ocean View Foundation. Developed all their nature programming on Block Island, and a few years ago that organization endowed a position for me at the Nature Conservancy.
The most common cool ones I would say would be the wading birds, the egrets and the herons.
Now that I had experienced Block Island by land, it was time to go aquatic. And for this I headed for the Great Salt Pond, also known as New Harbor, which is home to 3 marinas and serves as the hub of recreational boating on the island. But the Great Salt Pond and the smaller connecting ponds are also ideal for exploring by paddlecraft, as I discovered with Corey Hines, owner of Pond Beyond Kayak Tours and Rentals.
Before I started Pond Beyond, I worked with the Nature Conservancy and the Fish and Wildlife, doing eco tours, outreach and education with both families and kids and adults. So when the opportunity came to do it via kayak, I started that. It was a way to be on my own and be my own boss. And this is my 13th season. We're gonna explore the Great Salt Pond, which is about 1,000 acres. And we're gonna head north because it's low tides. We're gonna go out where we can really paddle. Well, originally formed by the glaciers 12,000 years ago. But then when the settlers came here, the Native Americans were already here and had opened up the pond. So it was a brackish system for the most part. We do have a bunch of egrets and herons that nest here. The most common cool ones I would say would be the wading birds, the egrets and the herons. So snowy egret, great egret. Later in the season, great blue heron, green heron. Got the American oystercatchers. This year we have 5 pair nesting around the pond. These back ponds are pretty brackish, especially during low tide. The Great Salt Pond is the watershed for about 65% of the island. So we've got millions of gallons of water, fresh water coming in here every day. Most shellfish will only grow in brackish water. So oysters grow best. They will grow or live in salt water, but they grow in brackish water habitat. I believe there's over 100 species of fish that use the Great Salt Pond in one form or another, whether it's for hatching or coming back here as adults, or eating, migrating in. Seen striper in here. I saw a dogfish in here last week, flounder, a lot of American eels. They're always fun to see those breach or have a cormorant get one of those. A typical tour is approximately 2.5 hours depending on the size of the tour, the number of people. Typically there are about 8 people per tour. We take a lot of time just paddling along the coastline, talking about the ecology of the pond, the history of Block Island, conservation. People always ask me when's the best time to come to Block Island. I always say the fall. The ocean is warmed up. Everyone's relaxed. We've come out of a crazy season. Everything's calm. The birds have started to migrate. It's a peaceful, amazing time. You can still do everything you do in the summer with less people around. The springtime on the island is quiet and peaceful. Places start to open in mid-March, so there's plenty of places to go eat and some shops to go in. And the nature trails are empty, the beaches are empty, the water's starting to warm up. Lots to do. I mean, bring the kids out. April vacation, always a good time. Quiet, kids can ride bikes, they can jump in the ocean if they want to, and there's plenty to do. I'm a lifelong islander. I have moved other places, traveled around the world a lot, but these are my roots. My family dates back, as far as I can tell, about 1720 on my mother's side. So I have a history of sword fishermen and farmers. So I'm passionate about what I do. And it feels great to be able to give back to the community and conservation and educate people on this amazing place that I grew up in.
Got him. There we go.
Yeah, buddy. That's what I'm talking about. Nice. Have fun with that rod, man.
Getting to know Block Island means getting to know the ocean as well as the land. And I had started that process with my kayak tour on the Great Salt Pond. Now it was time to venture beyond the protected waters of the pond, into the open ocean with fishing guide Hank Hewitt and his young mate Blaze Hatfield of the 33-foot charter vessel Harley. After leaving New Harbor at 6 a.m., Hank set a course for the North Rip, a long sand shoal that extends from the pointed northern tip of the island. The rip is formed by powerful currents sweeping over the uneven bottom, tumbling bait fish and setting up the perfect feeding station for bluefish and striped bass.
The big fish have an advantage over the smaller fish in that they can fight the current. And the best way I can say it or explain it is it's a conveyor belt of food. If you think back to that I Love Lucy episode where the conveyor belt's going, the chocolate's coming down, and she's all of a sudden, she couldn't keep it, she starts stuffing herself with it. Same concept I see, I look at current with, is it's a conveyor belt of food. So all that bait's getting swept, and the fish, the stronger, bigger fish, can actually, in running into the bait, kind of pin it to the current, and it becomes like it becomes a wall almost, and it's easy eating for them. Nice job, buddy. Nice job, man. Yeah. Good way to start the day.
That's right. Didn't take long.
Yeah. Pretty healthy fish.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Got you that time, you son of a gun. The key with this is that the jig lays nice and straight. Head shaker, I think it's a blue. He's coming up, yep.
Got him. There we go.
Yeah, buddy. That's what I'm talking about. Nice. Have fun with that rod, man.
All right.
Nice bass.
I'm on the board. All right, Block Island bass right there. Finally. She's a beauty.
A good portion of what we do on Harley is geared towards the Block Island angling experience, I like to say, and that encompasses taking a lot of families out fishing. It's an opportunity to introduce children, which are essentially the future, to some of the environmental concerns, being responsible, and another component to that angling experience is seeing them being successful, finding life in the water, and it's not all about just catching fish. You know, there's so much more that goes into successful angling, and what it does is it really shows you that you're a part of nature and how much bigger nature is than you. For me, the greatest aspect is putting children and families in a situation where they become successful. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's not the size of the fish, it's that a bent rod is a good rod. And if you have a lure and a drink long enough, you're gonna catch a big fish.
Having landed a few stripers and bluefish, we decided to switch gears and target another popular species among Block Island anglers. Black sea bass are abundant around the island and make reliable targets for kids and families seeking fast action. They also happen to be delicious.
The thing I love about sea bass is, number one, they're generally a shore bag. What we're doing is we're getting down to the bottom and working it through, hopping it across the bottom until it becomes in contact. As it starts to sweep up, then we swim it up, making it look like it's injured, wounded, or fleeing. And those are the triggers for the fish. Females are darker and they don't have the knot, and they don't have the blue in them. The males are the ones that will develop the knot on the head and start taking on that turquoise around the face and the dorsal.
With some sea bass and bluefish in the fish box, Hank gave the word to pull lines and turned the Harley back toward New Harbor, wrapping up a productive few hours of fishing in the fertile waters of the block. By land and sea, my late spring visit had revealed a different, quieter side of Block Island, one that many summer visitors failed to appreciate. But it's there, waiting for anyone who cares to dig a little deeper.